Appreciate being here.
Thanks for being here. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I've lived in Arizona for 15 years. I've been a resident of the Higley School District boundaries for 4 years. I'm married to the love of my life, Kimberly. We've been married for 4 years as well, and we have 2 wonderful kids, Tyler and Mackenzie.
Awesome.
I have a Bachelor's of Science degree from the School of Nutrition and Health Promotion at Arizona State University. And like you said, I am the Fitness and Wellness Director for Anthem at Merrill Ranch.
Great. There's a lot we're going to talk about what's going on there and some of the programs that you set up. But, you're running for the Higley Unified School District. What qualifies somebody to do that? What are the qualifications to run for the school board?
That's a really good question. A lot of people get confused on this because they think that in order to be on the school district's governing board, you have to be an education expert. And you have to be a former administrator or a current administrator, and that's simply not the case. This is what I feel is one of the more representative aspects to our government, and that is school boards are intended to be what's called lay governance. So lay governance means it should be parents and grandparents and small business owners, college students for all we care, right? But what you want is regular people acting in that role to hold the district administration accountable so that the pulse of the community is represented in the education process.
Interesting.
So that, along with, as I said, I am a husband, I am a father, a small business owner. I also guest lecture, and I'm an internship site director for Arizona State University for the same school that I graduated from.
So there's a lot on your plate. What's really driven you to want to run for the school board?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. Honestly, my wife and I believe that we have all been given talents, and it's our job to live with passion and to use those talents to help serve others. And so whether that's giving back to the community through community service, whether that's serving publicly, or whether that's just simply giving 110% at your employer, right? We believe that those talents you've been given should be used.
That's great. Wow. What are your let's say that you are elected. November 6th is the election. What are your top priorities if you're elected?
Yeah, thank you. Well, first, reshaping the culture's district to greater emphasize the customers of public education, right? Everybody knows that we have students, parents, and teachers. They are 3 of the customer groups. One of the customer groups that gets forgotten quite a bit are the taxpayers, right? The community members. And they are an integral piece to public education. And I feel that it's important that we have all 4 represented and that all 4 are really being taken into account. Now, I get a lot of questions, why do I call them customers, right? I believe that no matter what organization you're working for, whether it's a for-profit, a non-profit, government entity, you are serving someone else, right? That is one of the cornerstones to having a significant job, to having a job that means something in your life. And so really, I believe by getting back to the basics and calling them customers, that's going to allow us to focus on customer service and really reaching out and engaging each of those groups that I mentioned to create a better education process as a whole.
That's interesting. The Gilbert ER Hospital is really in partnership with the Higley Unified School District.
They are.
And so there is that customer service that that we're cognizant of, and so it's a good tie. So those of you listening, are wondering, well, what is the connection here? There's a huge connection with the hospital, the community service that we're doing,
it's true.
what we believe in with the unified school district. So there is a good connection. There's some really hot topics right now.
There are.
Education, technology. How did the 2 come together?
Yeah, well, there's two different approaches, I would call it, that are out there. One approach is to put a piece of technology in every student's hand. Okay. Ideally, right now, a lot of people that are proponents of that approach are going for the iPad. Right? The iPad is the new, it's the pop culture device. It is really a amazing device. I have one right here, actually. I don't agree with that approach. I agree with the other philosophy, which is applied technology. Okay, so one of the we have our overrides are on the ballot. 20% of one of the overrides, the capital outlay override, is going to go to student technology. Okay, and if you go back through the meeting minutes of our governing boards, they have addressed, and the superintendent has discussed, that the goal is to put an iPad in every 7th and 8th grader's hand, and ideally it's to have an iPad in every child's hand that's in the school system. And I believe that our society, we often mistake access to information with knowledge. And I don't think I just don't believe in that. I believe that access to information is a means to more effectively implement the existing knowledge that you have, right? My iPad is phenomenal. It makes me more effective and more efficient in doing what I already do. But it doesn't allow me, it doesn't create better learning for me.
Right.
And so I believe that in applied technology, we should really be partnering and creating, arts programs, right? Arts programs in the world of budget cuts that we're in, some of those peripheral courses tend to be the ones to go. Well, what if we incorporated both? What if we did an art program on the Adobe Creative Suite software, and we taught kids web design and web management and page layout programs and things like that, Photoshop, InDesign, Illustrator, the things that every small business out there could really use someone with those skills, but very few people have them. So by doing that, we would be preserving the arts and creating marketable skills in our students.
Exactly. I can't help but think, I know there's a question, but I can't help but think movement and exercise is very much part of what we want to preserve in our children as well. And I think, just sitting there, technology may, override that. So there's some things that we'll talk about with wellness and health and exercise in a minute.
Absolutely.
Joe, you have a question there?
We have a gentleman on the phone that was very insistent. He says, I know Mitch from the fitness center. I really want to ask him over the air. So is that okay with you that we have him on?
I guess. Let's go for it.
All right. Mitch, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Are you there, Mitch?
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, hi, Dr. Ann. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Trying to clear my throat there. Been one of those weeks. I was going to ask you, Dr. Ann, in regards to some possible things, and I also had a question for Jake there on your show. Can you tell me, first of all, anything that may be good for a vitamin supplement for sore throats and, head, something like that, something simple I can buy at my age?
Okay. Yeah, you know what? We're in a conversation right now. We will address that in a little bit when we talk about some of the health and wellness things. But thank you so much for your call. I don't know, did you have something you wanted to ask Jake?
Yeah, Jake, you're the person at Anthem at Lake Park Sad, right?
Yes. I do have a role in both communities.
Excuse me?
I do have a role in both community centers.
Yeah, with Merrill Ranch.
Correct.
If you do happen to get this position with Higley that you're applying for, or that you are running for, would that mean that you would be no longer at ArtSat?
That's a great question.
Good question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. No, it would not. I believe in prioritizing, right, and not taking on more than you can do. The nice thing about the governing board is that it's an unpaid, nonpartisan 4-year position, and they meet regularly twice a month in the evenings, so that working professionals can serve on that board.
Great, very good. Just to go back to the question about, just some supplements that you can get for sore throats, I want to just first of all say that we're entering into the flu season now. A lot of people, who come with sore throats and coughs and colds, a high number are due to a virus. And most people need to understand that an antibiotic really is not going to do anything for a virus. Usually a virus lasts anywhere from 7 to 10 days. Lots of fluids. Tylenol is important for some of the pain and fever and so forth. And there's some different supplements like echinacea, vitamin C, those kinds of things that you can get over the counter. The studies really don't show that echinacea, zinc, that's been used for a long time, really help to treat it. I mean, it really makes the symptoms feel better, and sometimes the viral shedding can be diminished. But honestly, there's no miracle thing that you can buy over the counter that is going to combat the virus. And so that's really, something that we unfortunately have to live with. Having said that, I think the flu shot is absolutely recommended.
Yeah.
To prevent against the dangerous strains of the influenza virus.
Yeah, the flu shot is something that we are big proponents of out at Sun City Anthem.
Yeah, and you guys are doing some fairs and some health educational kind of things.
That's right.
Yeah, I think that's great. So we were just talking about education and technology, and I was talking about kids and exercise. I want to get to wellness. In your opinion, Jake, what is wellness?
Yeah, my definition of wellness is that it is a holistic approach, and it is anything that you can do to improve the quality of your life and reduce your stress. So that means everything from better personal financial management, at home, right? reducing stress by networking with the professionals that you may need to use in the future, so that you're not having to scramble at the last minute when they're needed, but you actually have them ahead of time, being proactive.
Right.
So there's really a lot to wellness. There's nutrition, there's finances, there's the networking aspect of it, there's physical activity, there's exercise. It really is all encompassing of quality of life.
Right. We say that health is not just the absence of illness.
Right.
Right. Just you can still, we have people in the hospital that have a heart attack, for example, but they're healthy of mind, of spirit, of, so you're absolutely right. It's multifaceted, and I think that's important. You're a nutrition major, is that right?
I actually am an exercise and wellness major from the School of Nutrition Health Promotion, but we did engage in a lot of nutrition learning and things like that.
Do you have any tips about nutrition? I think that would, kind of dovetail on some of the questions that...
I do. Out at Anthem, we have had some tremendous success. We've been featured in the Florence Reminder newspaper with a group that we used to call the Biggest Losers Club. It has since changed. It's now the Building Healthy Lifestyles Challenge. And, we really wanted to encompass more than just weight loss with that. And, we've had amazing success with really creating lifestyle change programs. That's kind of the new direction I believe that the industry is going for weight loss, right? It's no longer about the binge diets and purging yourself. It's really now about creating that holistic approach, the lifestyle change that allows you to improve on all aspects, right? Reducing your dependence on medications, eliminating chronic diseases and things like that, reducing your waistline, obviously, eating better, but generally just creating a healthier approach to your life. And so the nice thing there is that it's not, it's not a 6-week or a 12-week or a 6-month goal where, typically we're trying to get back into bathing suit season, right? It's really now creating a routine for your life. So some of the tips that we use out at Anthem is be conscious of what you're eating. Okay? Now, I don't believe in overcomplicating the process, because I believe that when you do that, you're actually creating a physiological stress reaction to worrying about the overcomplication, the new aspect, that causes your body to reduce how hard it works at the target goal, right? And so we want you to be conscious of what you eat. That means you don't need to memorize the boxes of your food, but you need to know what's in it.
Exactly.
Right? And you would be amazed at how many people, when you sit down and you say, okay, bring me 3 of the things that you eat all the time, bring the packages in. They don't realize what's actually in what they're eating. Right?
So do you facilitate educational kind of classes and those kinds of things?
Yeah, we do. We have an expert seminar series out there, and we bring in local professionals. We've been happy to have you out there a number of times. We bring the hospitals out and other local providers. The Core Institute is another one that comes out all the time. They bring their surgeons on site. And we teach about, athletic injuries in older adults, right? We teach about things like nutrition, things like how to adapt to living in Arizona when you're not from here. Right?
Exactly.
So we really enjoy good educational programming.
Getting back to some of the tips, not over, complicating it, keeping it simplified. What other things is in that little handbook?
Yeah, so one of the big things that we do is we like to talk about how to schedule your day, right? And so when you really look at the average daily calorie intake for a person, it's typically little to no calories in the morning, and that doesn't change with age, right? You would think that okay, well, maybe that's because they're working professionals.
Interesting.
It doesn't change.
So it's really more personal kind of behavior.
That's right, and it's
personal preference.
We've all created that routine. Maybe we started early on because we were working, right? But it continues because we've created a habit. And so if you look at that calorie intake schedule, it's little to no calories in the morning, little to no calories in the afternoon, and a lot of calories, typically carb heavy, in the evening. Okay. And then if you look at the daily calorie output, so the physical activity levels for each portion of the day, it's typically high activity in the morning, moderate to high activity in the afternoon.
Because you're active and you're up and moving
right.
and
You're
working.
running errands and you're working and you're working in the yard and doing all sorts of things. And then the evening is typically sedentary.
Right. So you eat the biggest meal in the evening and
right.
you have the less activity after that meal.
Exactly right. So I use an analogy with our residents, and that is, if you knew that you had $20,000 coming into your bank account every month, first of the month, every time, you would be spending that money as fast as it could come in. You would be donating to charity, and you'd have TVs and houses and cars and vacations, and you'd be spending time with family. You would be spending the money because you knew it was coming in. Okay. on the flip side, if you only had $500 coming in every month, you're going to be nest egging that money away and preserving it as much as possible for the future. Okay? So what we're doing in my analogy is, with that approach of the calorie intake versus output, we're actually creating a habit for our bodies where we nest egg calories away because they know they're going to need them for all that activity during the morning and the afternoon, and it stays in that habit during the evening. So we eat the big meal, it continues to nest egg, but we don't do anything to expend the calories. And so now those calories sit inside of us, and we're creating a physiological habit for ourselves.
Interesting. So what you're encouraging people to get out and move and kind of adjust times of exercise.
That's exactly right. We need to match. We
it.
need to match up those schedules so that we're eating the calories when we're going to expend them.
Very good. That's interesting. That's a really great approach when you think about it. Joe, you have some questions.
I do. All right. We have Ronnie from Higley. Jake, you do a great job at Anthem, and you have our support for your Higley school position.
Thank you.
Comment there.
Thank you very much.
Very good.
Let's see. That was Ronnie Higley. Roy from Anthem. We have wonderful facilities at Anthem. It's one of the main reasons we moved there. It's a nice treat, Dr. Ann, for supporting us out here. We love your show.
Excellent.
That's great.
Thank you.
Janine, Gilbert, Arizona. What can I do to get started with a low-impact exercise program to start working out? I'm an out-of-shape 67-year-old female.
Great question.
Do you mind if I take that one?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that you can do is, again, I like to keep things simple, right? I believe that simple is the answer to our problems because it allows us to focus like a laser on the approach that we need to take.
Okay.
So the way that I would recommend approaching that is to first start with physical activity. Okay, so she said low impact, right? So how can you do that in your daily life? Physical activity is anything you can do that makes the heart beat faster, right? Exercise is anything you do specifically to improve your health. So I recommend starting with a good dose of physical activity, right? Create opportunities in your day to actually improve that heartbeat, to improve your heart rate, and you're going to burn more calories that way. You're going to start to increase your metabolic rate over time. Okay, so you can do that through park a couple spots further away at the grocery store, right? When you're going into the grocery store, carry a cart rather than push a cart. Carry a basket rather than push a cart if you're not getting a lot of stuff. There are all sorts of things. When you finish dinner in the evening, one way that you can expel, a number of extra calories is to just hand wash your dishes rather than do the dishwasher, right? So those are some simple techniques. When it comes to physical activity, I would really recommend starting with cardio training, cardiovascular training. So that means treadmills, recumbent bikes, bicycles, things like that. You can do that if you don't have access to a gym or you don't have access to equipment at your house. You can do that through in the evenings when you're watching TV. Stand up and step in place during the commercials. Right? There are some easy ways that you can do just like that to improve your physical activity and to improve how you're spending your calories.
That's some really, really great, information. Those of you listening, if you're interested in engaging in a low impact, one thing that you said that I really want to reiterate, you said that activity and exercise, two different things.
They are. They're very different things.
Say that again.
So physical activity is anything you can do throughout your normal, they're called ADLs, your activities of daily living, that will increase your heart rate. Okay. Exercise, on the other hand, is a targeted activity designed to improve your health.
Right. Or fitness.
That's exactly right. Yeah, fitness would be another name for exercise. They're both critically important to the process.
Right.
One can come before the other, though.
It is. It's like crawling before you walk.
That's exactly right.
And so you've got to increase your activity before you actually go out and exercise.
That's exactly right.
And I think in doing that, it will preserve and prevent from injury. I think part of that is stretching and flexibility and core. So that's really very, very good information. Joe, do you have another question there?
Sissy Martin from Mesa would like to know, what is better, I'm a 59-year-old female, an elliptical machine or a treadmill?
Yeah, great question. There's going to be some factors that are going to be case-specific. So if there are any type of joint issues, things like that, I would, especially with the knees, I would advise away from the ellipticals and towards the treadmills, simply because of the motion that you go through. But I would generally say start with the treadmill. develop your endurance and your capacity for the physical activity, the exercise that you're doing, and then progress to the elliptical. The reason why I say that is especially, we're dealing with a specific age demographic. We're dealing with, a more sedentary individual, and the elliptical is typically a more challenging exercise when you first start. The way I describe it to our residents out there is you're probably going to curse the elliptical for the first 3 to 4 weeks. Once you've gone through that 3 to 4 week period, you're going to love that machine arguably more than any other. But to start with, it's going to be much more challenging. And so because of that, if you're just getting back into that program, I would really advise starting with something that's
your body's
not going to push
normal,
you. Right.
and normally doing, which is walking.
That's exactly right.
That your body already knows how to do.
Right.
That makes sense.
Louis and Francine, first-year snowbirds from Florence Gardens. Any recommendation for the best place to shop for healthy food in our area, in the Florence area? Yeah,
absolutely. That's a great question. And that is one of the reasons that you had talked about some health expos and things like that we've created. The Fit for Life Expo is one of those things. And that's really designed to try and connect the residents of Pinal County with all of the various businesses that are out there.
Oh, that's good.
The one thing that I can tell you is there is not, aside from traditional markets, right, traditional grocery stores, there's not a lot of options. I do know that I believe Florence has a farmer's market that they hold during the good weather months.
Right.
So that's a good place to go and get some freshly grown, more organic type foods. But I would recommend, really shoot kind of into town off the 60. There is I believe it's a Whole Foods down off of the 60 and I want to say Gilbert. So that's a good one to try. But really, it's in my approach to nutrition and buying foods is that it's not so much about having to shop at the healthy food markets. It's more about having the knowledge and developing the knowledge to choose the healthier options at even the regular grocery stores.
Exactly, where you shop normally.
Right. Because like I said, I don't like overcomplicating the process. So if you have to drive an hour to go and get that healthy food, what's the likelihood that you're going to do that on a weekly or bi-weekly basis? It's probably relatively low. Whereas if you can cultivate the skills to be able to go into a regular grocery store and say, I'm going to buy X, Y, and Z because these are the ones that I know are going to benefit me the most, I would argue that is probably a much better and much more efficient approach.
Right. And when we get back to what wellness is, remember we talked about the stress part of it.
Right.
Well, if you're stressing yourself to drive an hour,
that's exactly right.
It's not going to happen.
That's exactly
right. And so you're really not achieving wellness, if you will.
Right.
So create it in and around the area where you are, and I think your chances of improving are going to be much higher.
Yeah. And Dr. Borik, if I could touch on one more thing with that, one of the other really big keys that I believe to nutrition, just since she was asking about healthy foods, is pre-preparing your food. Right? So it's an approach that I used to use when I worked with athletes. I was a physical development director and worked a lot with high school and college baseball players.
Right.
And we would use pre-preparing your food. So on Sunday, have a food prep time. And that's where you spend a couple hours in the kitchen and you prepare all the things that you can, cut all your vegetables, wash them all, put them in Tupperware containers, right? Your proteins. You can cook a good number of proteins in advance and then put them in the fridge in Tupperware and they're made. And what that's going to do is that's going to make your access to those healthy options easier within your own home, right? Which is something we were just talking about with access to healthy foods. So we not only want to do that with our grocery stores and our Whole Foods and places like that, but we also want to do that within our own household, pre-preparing so that it's there when you need it.
Right. And so you're increasing, again, your chances of being successful.
That's exactly right.
At living healthy.
Right.
I just want to approach one comment about nutrition. There was a study that just came out looking at tomatoes, lycopene. It's an antioxidant, very, very healthy for the body. Has been found to be good for cardiovascular health. And a lot of people ask me, and they may ask you as well, is it better to eat foods that are raw versus cooked? And a lot of times, the cooked or the kind of semi-cooked actually mobilizes the nutrients to allow us to access them, and it's called bioavailability in the body. And tomatoes is a perfect example. And so actually cooked tomatoes actually increase the lycopene for the body higher than if you eat it raw.
Right.
Same thing for carrots. And so don't get caught into this thing of, eating raw, vegetables that may not taste as good. That you want to increase the taste good food.
Right.
And you're going to, again, increase your chances of being successful at living healthy.
That's exactly right. Well, and one of the drawbacks to worrying about all of those factors is that there's a lot of factors out of your control, right? How quickly those foods, especially frozen vegetables and things, how quickly they're flash frozen, right? That's going to affect nutrient value and things.
Exactly.
And so some of that stuff you can't control even if you wanted to.
Right.
And so you might as well focus on achieving the bigger picture goal.
Exactly. That's a great comment. Yeah, Joe.
Helen from Florence would like to know, does your hospital have any mobile type of health screenings available in the Florence area for lower income or poorly insured folks?
Helen, that's a very, very good question, and I'm glad you asked it. Right now, Florence Hospital at Anthem, we're a new hospital. We're up and running. We do not have a mobile unit on site right now. However, I can tell you we do have a 31-foot RV that is purchased, that we have, that is currently being wrapped, and the intention is really to do exactly what you're talking about. Bring it into the communities. You know about the RV that we've talked about, and I'm hoping even to do some DocTalk, broadcasts from the mobile unit.
Absolutely.
So in the future, keep tuned in to our show, and you'll hear more about that. But right now, as of today, we don't have that access at this point, but it's coming.
Yeah.
And that's a good question. Anything else, Joe? Any other questions? Okay. Different types of physical activity. I want to get back to the school board, or there's some other things that we want to talk about, but while we're talking about exercise and activity, can you just give us a little bit of information about the different types of activity? We heard somebody ask about low impact. Aerobic, anaerobic, just a little bit of information about the different types of activity.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we when we do our fitness orientation, so that's where we give our residents that are new to the community a tour of the gym.
Okay.
We show them how it's set up, why it's set up that way. We break it up into 3 specific areas. You have your strength training, which would be more of an anaerobic.
Okay.
You have your cardiovascular, which is your aerobic, and you have your flexibility. Those 3 are all very, very important to the process. However, when you're starting, we can prioritize, right? And so we prioritize when you're just getting started. We like to build endurance first. So we start with cardio training, then we phase into a low weight, high repetition strength training, and then we move to flexibility. Now, one of the questions that we get a lot is, why do we do flexibility last? Well, a well-designed, low weight, high repetition, full range of motion, if you will, strength training program using circuit training machines will actually improve flexibility over the long run. Right. And so we like to progress from cardio to strength to flexibility, so that the flexibility, we're really incorporating that last, so that we're creating that quality of life.
Now, is it true there's some schools of thought thinking where flexibility training inside of cardiovascular sometimes can loosen a joint, make it lax, and increase the possibility for injury? I don't know.
Yeah, there's a couple of there's actually a number of schools of thought with regards to flexibility. Flexibility is one of the areas of fitness that has evolved rapidly over the last 20 to 30 years.
Right.
And so with flexibility, we like to break everything simply. So we say stretch before to prevent injury, stretch after to improve flexibility.
Got it.
And that's because if you truly want to improve flexibility for the long term, you need to be warmed up, you need to have your muscles engaged already, and so we want to stretch after a workout program. And if we're simply doing it to prevent injury, we're going to do it beforehand.
That makes sense.
Now, one of the schools of thought that we like to use is we like to do some dynamic stretching. So while we are proponents of static stretching, which is, a simple feet together, hang down, 30-second hold, deep breathing. Dynamic stretching is more movement-based stretching, and it's less strenuous on the joints themselves. And so we go through, we refer to them as Frankenstein walks and duck walks and things like that.
Yeah.
A little bit more fun terms, just so that we can create a fun, lighthearted atmosphere.
Right.
But straight leg walks, right, is a good one. That's going to do hamstrings, glutes, and lower back.
It's also going to increase balance.
That's exactly right.
Especially as people get older. I mean, that's a huge piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
To improve balance, to decrease fall risk, and all those kinds of things.
It is. In some of our boot camps, we have actually done a full day out of the 12 that is devoted to a dynamic workout. So it's all dynamic stretches, but in a workout format. And it is amazing how the very first time we do it, the coordination and the agility is fairly low. And then as we do it and as we have people repeat the program and we work on it, it's amazing how rapidly it will improve.
Yeah. And inside of that, we can't forget about water.
Right.
Because, water really is great to start out any exercise program.
It's true.
Because it removes, gravity, and you have aquatherapy
It's
there?
true, yeah, we do aquatherapy. We have a wonderful instructor, Diane, who teaches a swim aerobics class 3 times a week. She's also working on bringing in a really low impact, a lower intensity option for that. We also have the luxury of having an indoor lap pool and then an outdoor pool that has a resistance portion.
Wow.
And so it has a circular portion of the pool that actually has a current that runs nonstop.
Wow.
And it gives our residents literally every opportunity to engage in those activities.
That's fantastic. Joe, do you have a question there?
Lori from Anthem would like to know, will you be bringing the show live out to our facility again? Really enjoyed the last show here.
We just talked about that. I think we have, 3 or 4?
We have 4
days
on the schedule between November and February. So, I mean, that's every month for 4 months. It's going to be fun.
That we'll be out there. And I guess, Joe, you need to know that.
Fantastic.
That's good. Thank you
yes, we will be bringing it.
for calling, Lori.
Phil from Florence, he would like to know, do you have to live in Anthem to use the workout facilities, or is there anything public? If not, can you recommend somewhere to work out?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Anthem is a community, it's a semi-private community, meaning it is for the residents of Anthem as well as the guests of those residents. So we don't sell memberships, we don't have membership options available. It's just not something that's built into the business model. But what I can do is make some recommendations on some good places to go. There are a number of places kind of pocketed throughout Pinell County. One would be the YMCA, which is located in the Copper Basin community. Really nice facility.
Really nice facility.
Yeah, they have great group classes for fitness. They have personal training. I mean, they really do the whole show.
Right.
And so they're a good option for those non-Anthem residents. And they offer a lot of the same lifestyle things when it comes to having those group classes. So that's a good option. Another one is there's a couple of Snap fitness locations in Pinell County. And so it's a different design for a fitness center. It is about a 4,000 to 6,000 square foot model, and so it really provides you the core essentials for being able to become exercise friendly.
Excellent. Very, very good. There's something called metabolic syndrome, and I want to kind of touch on that a little bit. And I know you're interested in education and the whole school district, and we know that obesity now is an epidemic in our kids.
That's true.
There's no doubt about it. And I want to just kind of talk a little bit about the metabolic syndrome, and then maybe you can kind of intersperse, because I think exercise, stress management, diet, nutrition is really, really important to doing that. But for those of you listening, let's just take a moment and define the metabolic syndrome, just because I think that this is huge. And a lot of people really don't know what it is.
Right.
More than 30% of the American population have what's called the metabolic syndrome. And it's defined by 3 of 5 different conditions. Central obesity, meaning that in men, the waist is greater than 40 inches. In women, it's greater than 35 inches. High triglycerides, greater than 200. Low HDL, which is the protective cholesterol in the body. And when it's low, you don't have enough of it around to help flush out the arteries. So when that's less than 40, that's a risk factor. High blood pressure and elevated blood sugar leading to the risk of diabetes. So, when we have somebody like that, what are, in your opinion, as a fitness, exercise, wellness, how would you approach somebody with the metabolic syndrome?
Yeah, well, it would honestly depend on their initial starting point, if you will, for their physical activity level.
Okay.
So let's take a case that starts off with really low physical activity level, very sedentary lifestyle for a good number of years.
Okay.
We like to start with a really modified approach to the national fitness recommendations, and so we start on short bouts, right? So the 2007 recommendations were revised in 2010, and it essentially says that you can still get all the same health benefit for your 30 minutes a day of moderate intensity exercise if you break it up into 3 10-minute bouts.
Very good.
So you can do it in the morning, the afternoon, and the evening in 10-minute bouts, and you're going to get the same health effect as you would if you did 30
That's
minutes all at
exactly
once.
what recently came out, and there was a study out that just shows that intensity really is more important than duration.
That's exactly right.
And so that's exactly what you're talking
So
about.
what we do is we start them off with a modified version of the National Fitness Recommendations. We go a little bit less than 10. Remember, this is for an initially very sedentary individual.
Right.
We build them up to the 10 and then beyond it. And then once we've got them to a point where they're actually able to enjoy and engage in the exercise rather than just completing it, then we start to tackle a very modified version of interval training to accomplish the intensity aspect that you're talking about. So interval training was originally designed for Olympic athletes, right? And at that time, it was thought to be too strenuous for regular people, i.e. us.
Right.
And since, in probably the last, I would say 5 to 8 years, they've really started to come back with new recommendations on interval training and have said that actually this is really beneficial for everyone out there.
Absolutely.
Because it can give you up to twice the bang for your buck with the same amount of time.
Or less.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so we start off with about a 6-to-1 ratio. Actually, it's a 6 to 0.5 ratio. So for every 6 minutes of moderate intensity, we do 30 seconds of higher intensity. And then as we develop, so we'll do that for a few weeks at a time, and as we continue to develop and progress physically, we reduce that ratio from a 6 to a 5.5 to 0.5, and then a 5 to a 0.5.
Right.
And once we hit about a 4, then we start to raise from a 0.5 to a 0.75 and to a 1. And we kind of close that ratio gap so that the intensity becomes more, but the time stays the same.
Interesting. What we're talking really about is reforming healthcare.
That's exactly right.
I mean, when you really, really think about it, why are we talking about this? I can give you a mile-long list of reasons why we should engage in exercise. Preventing diabetes, I mean, it's huge.
Yeah.
That leads to kidney disease, kidney failure, dialysis. If we can stop that process, I mean, that's huge numbers of lives saved,
right,
but money saved as well.
That's exactly right. Well, and it's about, to me, it's about really taking an individualized approach, right? We tend to create curriculum-based training, right? And so that's where we create a general template and then we modify it slightly to fit people. I believe in taking the individual approach, and that's playing right into what you're talking about with reforming healthcare, is we really should be allowing smaller groups to engage in their own experiments and find out what's working for those groups.
Exactly. And I think, when we talk about this metabolic syndrome, which is, 30% of the American population have this, it leads to a high number of fatty liver, which then leads to cirrhosis of the liver, which is the #1 cause of liver transplant in this country. So what we're talking about, I think, is very pertinent to to the big picture.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's one person at a time.
Right.
And I think that's great. There's going to be some other questions. I want to get back to your running for the Higley Unified School District. Kind of sum up for us why you're running, what it's about, what you're going to do if you get into office. Because I think just listening to you and kind of sensing the balance that you have, I think you would be a great person on the school board.
Well, thank you very much. So, with my wife being a first grade teacher, with us having 2 young children, we believe, like I said, in being proactive, right? And that's, again, touching on that wellness aspect, being proactive and not letting things come to you.
Right.
And so, it's our firm belief that public education, it needs to empower those groups. It needs to empower the children to be successful, and it needs to give the teachers the support that they need to help our children excel, right? And so, I want to get involved so that my children and all the children, frankly, in the Higley, that attend Higley schools can have the best education possible and be the best prepared for the future, right? We're not going to do it with traditional approaches. And that's one of the strengths that I see in Higley, is that we are a small district. We're 24 square miles. Compare that, we're 6 by 4, right? Compare that with Gilbert, which is, I can't even tell you, it's huge, right? And Mesa is even larger. Those school districts are inherently, because of their size, going to have to move slower in addressing some of these individualized aspects. Higley has the strength of being nimble. And so I believe that we should be tapping into that, and we should be really taking an out-of-the-box approach to improving the education process and engaging the parents and teachers more effectively to be the kind of the tools, if you will, to improve that process.
So actually, when you talk about creating the best practice, it might be the perfect storm with the size of Higley,
right?
To do that maybe some of these other school districts might look to.
That's exactly right.
I think that would be a really, really great approach. Is there anything from a healthcare perspective, in the curriculum of the school district? I don't know. I know there's school nurses, and I mean, can you speak to that at all, or is that even pertinent? I don't know.
You know what? It is pertinent. However, it's slightly outside the scope of the governing board. The governing board's role is really to set the vision and the direction, and to hold accountable the district for achieving that direction and vision. And so, I believe that the governing board members should be responsible for what they can control.
Right.
And so that means that the school nurse programs and things like that while that will come before the board for approval, that is really the district's beast to be able to implement effectively, with the oversight of the board as kind of an assistance.
Right. What about some of the athletics? Concussion screening and some of that kind of stuff. Is that in the jurisdiction of the board or not?
It is in the jurisdiction of the board, again, from the approval standpoint. But that is something that the board is able to advocate for those things.
I see. Okay.
And so that is something that we need to be working with our student athletes to improve their safety on the field and to improve their effectiveness on the field. Right? If we can create an environment that allows some of these non-traditional approaches that we've been talking about, right? Some of these really more individualized approaches, that's going to allow us to more effectively train our athletes, and it's going to help kids get into college, because the better, athletics is it's one aspect, it's one avenue to getting to higher education. And so the more we can have successful student athletes who, again, are student athletes, they're successful in both.
Right.
We're going to be able to provide more, get more scholarships for those students and really help them through facilitating the resources that they need to achieve bigger and better things as they move down the road.
And do it all in light of safety. Right. Making sure that, that everything is in place to ensure that they're not, destroying their bodies. Right. In doing so.
Yeah, we have to maintain safety with student athletes as a top priority.
Right. Joe, do you have a question there?
Frank from Tucson, Arizona, 32-year-old male, would like to know, is there an issue with 2 to 4 alcohol drinks per day? Isn't it recommended to have at least 1 drink per day? So I figure 2 to 4 might be better.
Okay. That's a good question. Actually, the answer to that is, there are some studies showing that alcohol, especially red wine, has been found to be protective and beneficial for cardiovascular health. But a little bit that is good doesn't mean that a lot is better, especially when you're talking about alcohol. And the reason is that alcohol in and of itself has an effect on the heart muscle, where it tends to weaken the heart muscle. So a lot of people are really misguided and misdirected when they're told that alcohol is good for your health, because it really isn't. When you look at the whole of what health is. Yes, there are studies that alcohol does improve that LDL, cholesterol, and cardiovascular. But on the flip side of that, we see it every day, where people come in with what's called alcoholic cardiomyopathy, and it really doesn't take a whole lot of alcohol to do that. 2 to 4 drinks a day, in my mind as a medical physician, is a lot of alcohol and can be detrimental to your heart, especially to your heart muscle health. Now, that's not to say that, and that's not even mentioning what alcohol does to the liver, which, is very, very bad.
Yeah.
And so I would be very, very cautious. When we say that alcohol is good, it's an ounce or 2, but, not more than that, because you really can damage and increase the risk of problems in your body.
Yeah, well, and if I could touch on something that you said, that more is not better in that aspect.
Right.
That's something that, in the fitness industry, we use a theory, right, called the dose response. And the dose response essentially says the more you do, the better. Right. Okay. And that's something that I've had that exact conversation with residents about, whether it be, alcohol or, things like that come up in the newspapers and in the headlines. Right. And, in fitness, the more you do really is better. And so when you're engaging in a physical activity program, if you can do 5 minutes, that's better than no minutes.
Right.
If you can do 10 minutes, that's better than 5, 12 is better than 10, and so on. Right? If you can, when you're doing strength training, if you can get that extra, that last, set or, repetition or two, right? That's going to be better than if you didn't. Now, obviously, when you're doing resistance training, there are some alternate factors. There's the weight and things like that.
Right.
So you want to maintain safety, like we talked about. But really, with physical activity, the more you do, the better. And then, on the flip side, though, like you said, with alcohol and things like that, that dose-response theory doesn't correlate to a lot of those other things.
We can even extrapolate that and talk about stress. Some stress is good for the body.
Sure.
If there was no stress, for example, if I put your arm in a cast and didn't stress the muscle, that muscle would atrophy and it would weaken,
right,
and it would become not effective. So some stress is good. Too much stress, though, can tend to be very detrimental. It can tear down the body.
That's exactly right.
Stress can attack blood vessels. It can decrease blood flow. It can increase Alzheimer's, dementia, more rapidly. So there's a lot of things that it can do. So you have to be very careful, and that's a perfect example.
Yeah.
That depending on what you're talking about, sometimes more is better, but
right.
But
But
in
other
other
times
things,
it's not. Other times it ends up being detrimental.
Exactly. I think we have another call coming in here.
Thank you, Jerry.
There's some great calls, and notice most of our calls today are from local people.
Yeah, that's really fantastic.
Which is really great. Joe, you have another?
Yes, Jerry from Flagstaff, 27 years old. An interesting question here. I love potato chips. I've been eating the fat-free kind made with the non-fat oil, but I get really bad diarrhea after I eat them. Is this bad, normal, or maybe it's flushing my system out and that's healthy? Can you help me?
Well, real quick, before Dr. Borik chimes in on this, I just want to touch one thing real quick, and that is biofeedback, right? Biofeedback is something that we use in the fitness industry in health education. Biofeedback means what is your body telling you whenever you do something. So whether that's rehabbing from an injury, whether that's engaging in physical activity or exercise, engaging in a diet program, the foods you eat, right? Pay attention to what your body tells you, because really you know yourself and your body knows itself better than anybody else will. And so, I've noticed that there are certain foods that I eat that just don't fit with my body. And so those foods I have to try and stay away from.
Very good comment. Jerry, in reference to your question in terms of is it just flushing the body, I don't think so. And I would actually agree with what Jake just said in terms of your body responding to it. Probably either your body has, I don't want to say an allergy, but you're just not tolerant or intolerant of whatever chemicals or ingredients are in that potato chip. I don't know. But I would be very cautious, and I probably wouldn't continue to eat the fat-free that's causing bloatiness and so forth, because
right.
it's it's not agreeing with your system.
Right.
And so I would just avoid it.
Yeah.
Other things to avoid, just while we're talking about that, there's something called lactose intolerance. People who can't tolerate milk or milk products. And, when you think about it, when you eat cheese or you eat milk, drink milk, and your body responds, if you continue to do that, it's not flushing your body.
Right.
It's really more stressing the body, and as you continue to do that, it's just gonna increase
right.
diarrhea. You're gonna lose electrolytes, and over the long haul, it's not gonna be good.
Right. Well, and one of the common reactions, or the common reaction for the body to stress, is fight or flight.
Right.
Right. And so your body is going to engage in that same type of response in all aspects of life.
Exactly.
And so that as you said, it's not necessarily that it's flushing your body out in a good way. It's that it's flushing it out in a fight or flight way.
Exactly.
Right?
It's trying to protect
clear
itself.
it. That's exactly right.
It's trying to protect, and it protects itself without you giving it permission to do that.
Right.
It's a subconscious kind of a thing.
Right.
And while we're waiting for another question, I just want to talk about the fight or flight, because that's huge, and people listening may or may not know what we're talking about. But in the body, there's what we call the autonomic nervous system, and there's what we call the sympathetic and the parasympathetic system. And whenever, I'm just going to kind of give you a scenario, whenever you feel anxious or you feel like you start sweating, your heart race, your heart starts to race, you start breathing a little bit heavier, that's a response in your body that is in response to the release of certain chemicals, catecholamines that are released by the brain, in response to stress. Now, whether that stress be, running away from danger,
right,
or that stress be, drinking a glass of milk that, your body's responding to, or that potato chip that your body's responding to,
Gotcha.
your body's going to respond. And so what I often talk about is in trying to bring homeostasis or balance to the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. And one way to do that is to do more meditative type exercises. Music therapy is a fantastic way to engage in that, where you bring the parasympathetic system a little higher, and it decreases that sympathetic catecholamine release, and you feel relaxed.
Right. Now, would yoga and meditation training fall into that category?
Absolutely. That's the whole basis, of why Tai Chi and yoga, Sign Chi Do program that I developed using sign gesture, uses breathing as the modality that really releases serotonin and the chemicals in the body that tend to dilate blood vessels, increase blood flow, and begin to relax and calm the body.
Yeah.
And so that's just kind of in response to the fight or flight that we talked about. Do you have a question, Joe?
Melissa from San Diego, California. She says, in paying attention to one of your past recent shows, I quit menthol cigarettes after smoking them for 14 years.
Wonderful.
I went to regular cigarettes, and now I get nauseous every time I smoke one.
Perfect.
Any idea why?
That's perfect. We said that menthol cigarettes, and you may want to add into this, but a lot of people think that menthol and the light cigarettes are actually better for you, when in fact menthol tends to dilate the bronchioles, and it actually increases the body's absorption of the nicotine in the tar, so you can take a deeper breath, so you're doing actually more harm than good. So by changing now, Melissa just changed to the regular and gets nauseated, maybe she won't smoke now. So
After 14 years.
That's perfect.
That's a success story.
That's
a big change.
That is a success story. Initiated from DocTalk Radio.
Nice.
Very nice.
Good.
Did you have, what about smoking cessation? That's a great, do you have any of those kinds of programs?
Yeah, we haven't engaged in a formal program. We have had in that Building Healthy Lifestyles Challenge program that I talked about earlier. The reason why we switched from Biggest Losers Club to Building Healthy Lifestyles was because of the fact that we wanted to encompass more healthy lifestyle behavior changes.
Right.
And so we did have a number of people that joined for smoking cessation. However, while we didn't target for that, what we did do is educated them on healthy practices, right? So all of the things regarding the nutrition, regarding how to make those choices so that you're able to, on your own, without my help or without any other professional's help, be able to make those choices and improve your health style, your healthy lifestyle. And I'm happy to say that every person that joined the program for smoking cessation had quit by the end of the 12 weeks.
Wow.
And has remained off of cigarettes.
That's the key, is the
and
longevity.
It is phenomenal. I mean, and it's been 3 years.
Wow.
And they are still smoke-free since the program.
If there's one thing that, we're talking about exercise and diet and nutrition and all of that. But honestly, if there's one message, one take-home message from DocTalk Radio that we can get out there, if you're interested in a healthier being and you smoke, if you could just stop smoking,
yes,
you would add years and years to your life.
Absolutely right.
That is probably the number one single worst thing that you can do for your body.
Right. Well, and not to mention, I'm a firm believer that we want to add two things, right? We want to add both years onto our life, but we want to add quality years.
Exactly.
And so when you quit smoking, I think it's worth mentioning, and this is actually more than just smoking. This is for those dealing with arthritis as they engage, as they first start to engage in an exercise program. This is for a number of people that have something like that, and they want to get off of it. The thing that I think is worth mentioning is that typically they are going to experience more discomfort for the first couple of months, right? As they're changing their lifestyle, it's going to get more uncomfortable. But
before it gets better.
That's right. And once it gets better, it gets drastically better.
It really does. And physiologically, we know that that your lung age approaches the normal lung after years of being off of smoke. So that's really good. Joe, you have a question?
Jonathan from Young, Arizona. I love hiking. I get very lightheaded and have difficulty breathing at high altitudes. Is there anything you can recommend or that I can do to change this? Love the show. Watch it every week.
Great. Thanks, Jonathan, for calling.
Great, yeah. Well, high altitude is definitely one of those things that it affects a lot of people, especially when you're not used to it. Now, I'm not familiar with the altitude specifically in that town, but what I can tell you is that, you know, as an athlete, I was an athlete myself, and then also working with athletes, that's something that you do have to train for, is being able to go up to high altitude and engage in activity.
Right.
Because, you know, the air is a little bit thinner and it's harder to absorb that oxygen.
It is. And the mechanism, and I just want to kind of give you a little idea, there's something called 2,3-DPG that is a receptor on the red blood cell. And as we go higher in altitude, the red blood cell tends to hold on to oxygen more. That's why it doesn't release it, and the oxygen isn't available as readily at altitude, at a higher altitude than when we're at sea level. And there are certain things that can be done. I think the interval training to kind of get your body acclimated, eventually over time, you know, your body gets adjusted and it acclimates.
Well, and one of the reasons why the interval training works is because you improve what's called your VO2 max, or your aerobic capacity, your cardiovascular capacity, right? And so you're actually improving your lungs' ability to absorb oxygen, which will help with that high altitude training. Exactly.
And so I think that's important to keep that in mind. But there's also something else. There's some supplements, not supplements, but prescribed medications that can be used that really help to mobilize that. Diamox and some other things that you can check with your doctor, Jonathan, to see if that's something that might be, you know, something that you might want to engage in.
Great.
Yeah, so that's a good question. Do you believe we're out of town, out of time?
I cannot believe it. This hour has flown by.
It really, really has flown by. You are really an asset to, you know, to the community, to what we do. And I really thank you for, you know, coming on the show.
Thank you very much.
This has been a very enlightening show. You know, in the last 2 minutes left, is there anything else you want to kind of wrap up and just, you know, tell us about it? Just take a couple minutes and kind of wrap the show up.
Yeah,
as you go on the campaign trail now.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd like to touch on just a couple of things really quick. One is the Fit for Life Expo, which is November 10th out at Anthem at Merrill Ranch. It's from 11 to 4. It's free to come. Tons of exhibitors, health and fitness assessments and you know, testing is going to be going on there,
and
all for free.
Is part of that.
The hospital, Florence Hospital Anthem, is our presenting sponsor, so they are the organization that is helping to put this organization on. They're going to have a significant footprint at the event. We're working on getting EKG testing and free flu shots and things like that that will all be offered at that event. And then just to kind of wrap up and touch on the campaign trail, I would appreciate anyone that's listening from Higley. I would appreciate your support in the upcoming Higley School Board race. The early ballots will come out actually tomorrow, and so please vote for Jake Hoffman. And then there's a couple of ways that you can find out more about me.
Absolutely. That's what I wanted to get to.
Yeah. And so my website is www.jakehoffman.us. And then my Facebook is facebook.com/Jake Hoffman, 4, Arizona. And my Twitter is @JM Hoffman. So any of those three ways are great to connect with me. If you have questions about issues related to Higley, please just email or call, and I'll make sure that you get the time that we need to give you. So
really, really awesome. Thank you so much,
Thank
Jake.
you for having me.
Thank you. That's it, Joe. All right. This concludes DocTalk Radio with Dr. Ann Borik. Till next time, I wish you health, wellness, and many blessings.
DocTalk Radio is brought to you by Gilbert Hospital and Florence and Anthem Hospitals. Topics discussed are for informational and not intended to substitute advice from your personal physician.